I was one of the best entertainment writers, I remember. I used to specialize in feature stories, human interest stories, entertainment, you name it, exclusive stories, all that. So it was all good, I remember. And even at the time, I remember I was opportune to interview a number of musicians from within Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, let me just say East Africa, Nigeria, Congo, Central Africa, UK, US, you name it. All musicians used to come to Kenya. I used to be given the opportunity. I used to be assigned to interview them due to my unique skills, and I thank God for that. So I did the interviews, I remember. I did exclusive interviews also at the same time. And I was also I was assigned to interview, not opportunity, I was assigned to interview, since I was daring, I was assigned to interview, witch doctors, witch doctors, morticians, mortuary attendants, and evil spirits. Let me just put it that way, because most of my colleagues were scared, but I was daring. So I remember at some point during my first interview, I was opportune. Actually, I interviewed the evil spirit. I was able to speak to evil spirits. I remember the first interview I was with my colleague, and we went there into a witch doctor's den. It was so scary. It was somewhere within Eastlands, and it was very huge. So the first thing that I saw were 7 pots full of blood. And I asked the witch doctor, the purpose of the blood, and he told me that it was food for the evil spirits. I didn't quite understand. And I wanted to know where the blood were from, animals or what type, human. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but he told me that the blood are from animals. I don't know who are being sacrificed. I don't know. I cannot argue. But all I did is I saw the pots. There were 7. And then they had huge straws. Inside the pots there were huge straws, 7 of them, full of blood. So I inquired, and he told me that the evil spirits use the straws to draw blood, to drink blood from the pots. So I didn't want to say much, and then he showed us briefcases full of money, 1,000 notes. There were millions actually. So I remember after this interview, before we began the interview, I was a bit scared. So the witch doctor requested that we go back home and come back after 1 week. So we went and came back a week later. So that week, when we arrived, upon arrival, we were ready. So his role was to entice the evil spirits. I remember it was so scary, but I don't know. It was too late. We could not just, could not change our mind, because we were already there, me and the photographer. So he began enticing the evil spirits by burning incense, chanting rituals, and using a handbell, I remember. So as the spirits were coming, I think the witch doctor lost control, or rather he went still like a dead person. And we were there. We were so scared with the photographer, and I remember we kept holding hands, because there was no way of escaping. We were already locked inside there with the evil spirits, and the man was still. The man who we were talking to was already still. So we were just there, waiting for the worst probably to happen. So I remember when they came in, when the first one came in, they were speaking in pure Kiswahili, not English, but pure Kiswahili. And they was just saying, "Tuko hapa mwanangu, here I am, my daughter." That was what they said. The first one, the second one, the third. When the 5th one came in, I lost my memory. And then the 6th one, and then the 7th one, and then they were able to restore back my memory. These are evil spirits, remember, so they can do anything. Even the Bible tells us that evil spirits are fallen angels. So I remember my memory was restored back, and I could hardly speak because I was scared. My colleague now was not even saying anything. We kept we just held hands, and then when I gathered courage, I remember asking them their role. And they quoted a verse in the Bible which says to kill, steal, and destroy. And I was even more scared. And then I inquired from them where they were from, where they are from, where they live, and why they had to take too long. And then they told me that the reason why they took too long after being enticed by the witch doctor is because they were coming from various oceans. They live in the oceans, in oceans. So they mentioned Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, I think there's Arctic Ocean, and is it Archaic? I don't remember, but there were 5 oceans. I cannot remember Indian, Pacific, Atlantic, and Archaic Ocean. Arctic or Archaic, I don't remember too well because I lost my memory. So they told me that when they were being enticed, they had to come from there, come and drink the blood from the pots, and then go to various countries. Then they told us that, you see, human beings, when you want to go to the US or the UK, you take like more than 10 hours. Like India, for instance, it takes 7 hours by flight. So they say they only take 5 minutes to fly to any country that they've been assigned to after taking the sacrifices or the blood. And then they go and they enter into that person, and then they bring that person home. That is why you see somebody disappears abroad for 10 years and then comes back home after 10 years. They told me that they've been assigned to do that, so they do that on a regular basis. So then they requested they wanted to talk to my late father. And I said the Bible tells us there's no connection between the living and the dead. And then they requested they wanted if I would talk to any of my relatives late. I said no, I refused. But the photographer was just quiet, he was not uttering. I think he was in shock. So after the interview, I remember he requested to take a picture of these evil spirits, and they agreed. So he took pictures. As we were looking at the camera, it was a quality camera. We could just see bones, like skeletons. That's what we saw. So we could hardly understand. So he continued taking pictures of the skeletons. He was excited. And then by the time the evil spirits were done now, I inquired from them a lot of things, their role and stuff like that. And then they want me not to write anything negative about them, or they would come for me. They know where to get me. That's what they told me. And I said I would never do that. So I remember after the interview now, when the evil spirits now began leaving, there was no need to entice them because they had already been enticed. So they were just leaving, and you could hear the sound of a bell ringing, like somebody ringing a bell, and they leave one by one.
Since that day, Carol's life began changing. Something shifted inside her. She had no idea what awaited her on the road she took that day. However, we have heard that spirits cannot be captured on camera, but your colleague took some photographs, right? How did they turn out?
I remember upon leaving, the picture disappeared from the camera. Shock on me, shock on my colleague. We didn't know what we were going to tell the company because the pictures were there were skeletons, then they disappeared. So I didn't know. I was shocked. So after that, I remember I developed complications, health issues, as in I had severe headache. I was not okay at all. Let me just put it that way. I was ill, critically ill, and my colleague too. So I decided to go to the nearest church upon leaving the witch doctor's den. My colleague, I think he didn't believe in these things, so he said he didn't see the need of going to see a pastor. Me, I went, and I remember the pastor prayed for me. I told the pastor that I've had an encounter with evil spirits, and he prayed for me. Deliverance was conducted and stuff like that, and I think that somehow saved my life, because after that I've been undergoing deliverance sessions and prayers with more than 50 pastors. I remember after that in different churches. My colleague did not see the need of going to a church or for prayers. Now 6 months later, one day when I was walking in town, I remember somebody tapped my back, and when I turned, it was the witch doctor, and he told me that the evil spirits were very excited with the story. I remember when the story came out and it was published, it sold, thousands of copies, like never before, I remember. So they were very happy, and they had told me that the story would sell, the evil spirits, I remember.